Hey gang, it's your old buddy Platt. Today we're continuing on our wine series. We're also continuing on our sub-series about fortified wines. Today we're going to talk about Madeira. Madeira is a fortified wine from the Portuguese island of Madeira that is off the coast of Africa. It ranges from anywhere from dry, which could be drank as an aperitif, to sweet, which could be drunk as a dessert wine. The island of Madeira itself has been producing wine since the age of exploration, so we're talking about early 1500s on. Because Madeira, because of where it's situated, was kind of the last stop before the long journey out to either the New World, South Africa, India, what have you. Kind of came the last stop to grab things like wine, and the wines of Madeira got shipped throughout the world and kind of gained some popularity. What quickly ended up happening, though, was that the Madeiran winemakers realized what the others in Europe did too, that these long journeys were tough on wine, tough to maintain the quality. Well, they followed the Portuguese in fortifying their wine. They already had a ton of sugar cane on the island, so they were already distilling a lot already, so they then started fortifying the wine, and they realized that it would help hold up for the journeys. Actually, a lucky almost accident occurred. Some shipments of the wine got shipped off and they got brought back. They just didn't get sold, didn't get moved, what have you. And when people tried them after the journey back, they realized there's a unique taste. They realized that the constant motion of the boats kept that wine stirred up, kind of kept the chemical action going in there. They also realized too, in the wine being held in these ships' hulls almost kind of gave it a baked quality. The temperatures were real high in those hulls, and so it kind of produced a unique wine that people started to like, especially people in the New World. As far as sweetness level is determined, they can adjust the sweetness by when they fortify it. This is where it kind of differs from port and sherry. Remember, port we fortify it early before fermentation really gets going. We get a lot of sweetness. Sherry, they allow the fermentation to complete, thus it's a drier product. Madeira kind of does it at different phases depending on the sweetness level they want to achieve. So that's where it kind of sticks. One of the ways it sticks out from port and sherry. After a while, when they first started selling these wines and then intentionally heating them, they would put them on ships, tell them to sail around, hey, come back. Well, they realized that was a costly way to do business. Paying for shipping, and again, especially back then, it was still risky. When you send a ship out, you weren't sure it was coming back. So they started creating artificial methods to heat them, and they used the term estafago. And they would heat these wines various lengths, and then they would cool them. Estagio is the resting period after the heating. Going over the grapes. Originally, Madeira was made with 4 grapes, referred to as the 4 noble grapes. Cercial, Verdelho, Boal, and then Malvasia, or something referred to by the British as Malmsey. You might see or have heard of a wine called Malmsey, and that's from that Malvasia grape. Later on, and today, the predominant grape in Madeira production is Tinta Negra. Produces roughly 85% of the Madeira out there. Back to the heating method. Like I said, they created a couple of artificial methods to heat. There's actually 3 methods of heating for Madeira, 2 artificial, 1 regular. First is called Cuba de Calor. And nowadays they'll have the wine sitting in stainless tanks, and they'll have a heat jacket on that tank to heat up the wine, or they'll run a pipe or tube into the wine itself and heat that tube. They'll heat it anywhere to 115 to 130 degrees, and they'll do that for roughly 90 days. This is the cheapest method to do it, and it's also the method used for probably the lowest qualities of Madeira wines. Next method is armazém de calor. This is where they will store the wine in a room that's basically a sauna. Steam is pumped in the room to heat the room. It's an indirect heat, so it is a slower process. They will leave it in the room from anywhere from 6 months to a year. It's kind of the next step up in quantity. And next but not least is Cantero. That's how they do it today. Again, sending off Madeira in ships is not prudent, and so today they will put Madeira barrels in the loft of the warehouse. That's where the heat will rise up, and they will leave it in there minimum of 3 years, but a lot of time they'll leave these barrels anywhere from 20 up to 100 years in that loft. We were speaking of the grapes earlier, used originally the four noble grapes to produce Madeira. Actually, they are also, those grapes, the terms also are used to describe the sweetness level. Kind of gets a little confusing. But we have Cercial, which is a dry style. You have Verdelho, which is medium dry. Boal, medium sweet. And then Malvasia is sweet, or again, Malmsey. Nowadays, because of EU regulations, you won't see those varietals designated unless they make up 85% of that bottle. But again, Tinta Negra has now become the predominant grape. So what you most likely will see is the term dry, medium sweet, what have you. But be prepared, you could see either one of those. Again, Tinta Negro can be made at all levels. Several rankings or terms as far as quality goes. First, you'll have something called finest. Finest is even though it's called finest, it's the lowest level. Been aged for 3 years. Usually, it's the estofagum, the artificial heat used to produce these. Generally used in cooking. Madeira is very popular in the culinary world. There's also a cooking Madeira that's out there that has salt and pepper added to it. You do not want to drink that. But again, like the cooking sherry, very popular in the culinary world. Next, you have Reserve, which has been aged for 5 years. Special Reserve, aged for a minimum of 10 years, and no artificial heating used in Special Reserves. Next, you have Extra Reserve. That's 15 plus years, but most of the time, if wines make it this far, they're went ahead and pushed out to 20 years in term Cojita or also Harvest. You'll sometimes have vintage, specific vintage years, or well, with Cojita and Harvest, sometimes they'll blend vintage years and say, well, that tastes like a 5-year-old should or a 10-year-old should or what have you. But sometimes you will see vintage Madeiras that will have the date on it, the year on it, but you won't see the term vintage, because vintage in the EU is a protected term for port. So Madeiras, you might see a 1984 Madeira, but we'll never say a vintage Madeira. There's one other style that's out there that I should speak to, referred to as Rainwater. Rainwater is a style of Madeira that's a little milder, a little smoother, that became real popular in the U.S. Doing a little research, Thomas Jefferson loved Madeira. Several of our founding fathers loved Madeira, and a lot of the American colonists and Americans in general loved the milder style or Rainwater. Not sure, 100% sure where the name come from. There's a lot of myths out there. One of them that literally Rainwater got into the wine, which mellowed it out, kind of cut it a little. But nowadays we're not using Rainwater. Before we try, one little last bit that I find interesting about Madeira. Because of the fortification and also because of the heating, this wine is virtually indestructible. Unlike a regular bottle of, let's say, Cabernet Merlot or Arbor, you'll pop open and you have a few days to drink before it goes bad. This stuff really doesn't go bad. And even after I open this, I don't have to throw this in the refrigerator. I don't have to do anything to it. I don't need the little air, where you suck the air out. this will stay, and this will stay for a long time. So it's one of those things that you could try tonight, maybe try 6 months from now, 2 years from now. Keep on the shelf. Just make sure you dust it off every once in a while. The Madeira we're going to try today is a little different. I do have to confess, checked a couple of my local liquor stores. They did not have actual Madeira from Madeira. I'm sure I could have found some at some specialty stores we have out here in Vegas, but I kept running into this American Madeira, and like I've pointed out in other videos, these terms are protected in Europe, but they also get used here in the U.S. because we have a little looser laws. And so you'll see American ports, American sherries. And I found this American Madeira by Masson. So I thought, let's give her a try. 18% alcohol by volume. Let's crack her open. All right, color-wise, again, similar to port, that it's a almost watered down kind of cola. Nose-wise, similar to the cream sherry I tried at Harvey's. Let's give her a taste. That is funky. Funky in a good way, though. Plenty of sweetness up front. Wow. Trying to put my finger on the funkiness on there. Coats the tongue a little bit more. I wouldn't say it's as viscous as the sherry. Let's say I pick up a slight bit of wood. Yeah, I guess I get a little bit of the wood quality, not much. There's a little fruit in there. I do get some, I want to say grape, that's too simple, but some of that fruit, some of that red fruit, or, you know, your grape, plum, you know, kind of a dark fruit in there. But that is nice in the sense that I get plenty of sweetness, but it doesn't have quite the viscosity of a port. I think sometimes the viscosity, certainly the sweetness might not be too much, with the sweetness with viscosity, you get syrupy, but that's not this at all. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like these videos. Lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.